The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And thanks for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. Tonight, we have a great show planned for you. Starting off, it's a story that keeps on giving, and not necessarily in a good way. TMZ reports men are starting to sue P. Diddy, male accusers. The new revelations are shocking, to say the least. 6 different lawsuits filed by Houston attorney Tony Busby says the plaintiffs were sexually assaulted. 4 of those 6 were filed by men, including an alleged victim who said he was 16 years old at the time. Busby says he is representing more than 100 plaintiffs. I talked with attorney Bayoji Akingbala about the stunning update. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us Bayoji Akingbala, a former prosecutor and now criminal defense attorney. And we have heard some of the details in the latest civil suits against Sean P. Diddy Combs, filed by Houston attorney Tony Busby. And wow. These are, we've had at least a half dozen male victims now that we're hearing who they claim that they have been sexually assaulted by the music mogul, drugged, almost the same MO in each case. Tell us a little bit about what we know in these civil cases and what these plaintiffs are alleging here.
Yes, to my understanding, 6 separate plaintiffs have filed lawsuits through the Busby law firm, ranging from incidents that occurred from 1995 as recent as 2021. And I can go down the timeline for each of these cases. The first one was in 1995. It was alleged to have happened in a bathroom at a music release party. And in that particular lawsuit, the individual was a young female who was allegedly raped. And then now spanning to 1998, which is perhaps the most disturbing allegation. It involves a young child who was at the age of 16 at one of those infamous white parties in the Hamptons. And he stated that Diddy brought him into a more secluded area of the white party, asked him to drop his pants, and he began fondling this 16-year-old individual.
And then he promised in that case that this is almost like an initiation into the music industry, which is disturbing in itself.
Yes, under the guise of, hey, I can make you a star, he said this is a rite of passage, and that's why he needed this individual to drop his pants. And so this poor young man at the age of 16 felt pressure to do so, and he acquiesced to the demands of Diddy. And that occurred in 1998. There was another incident in a Marriott hotel, and this one occurred in 2004. And Marriott is actually listed as a co-party in this particular allegation. And in this one, it involves a 19-year-old young female college student who claims to have been sexually assaulted under the threat of violence. What you were alluding to is that we have on 2 separate occasions, 2 male victims, one in 2006 and another in 2021, who said that they were at particular parties, that they consumed a very small amount of alcohol, and nevertheless, they were not in their full physical faculties. They believed that they may have been drugged. And because they could not control themselves, they couldn't even move their bodies. One said that he actually felt paralyzed. But what they do remember, however, is being sexually assaulted, and in one case by multiple men at the party. And then lastly, there's an incident that happened in a Macy's department in 2008 involving a Macy's employee who was pistol whipped and made to orally rape. He was orally raped by Diddy. Again, Macy is actually being listed as a co-party in that particular lawsuit as well. So this involves
these are some wild stories that we're hearing now, Bayoji. And one of the things that we pointed out, vetting these stories will be crucial for Mr. Busby, right?
Yes. In his original press conference, Mr. Busby stated that there are thousands of calls that their office received, but the ones that they chose to go forward on were ones that they were able to corroborate with independent evidence, and they used their own private investigator to get some of that evidence. One thing that strikes out to me is the 2021 case involving the male who was date raped. He mentions that he actually sought therapy. And that's actually very compelling corroborating evidence, because as you can imagine, if I just made this up, I'm not going to a therapist. But if after 2021, this actually happened to me and I'm seeking a therapist and I'm having these private conversations with the therapist for years about an allegation, one could see how that makes that allegation more credible. So they could very well rely on the therapist notes in the court of law to demonstrate the credibility of this man's allegations.
And when we take a look at the 16-year-old male who said he was fondled by Diddy at the white party, he provided a picture of him with Diddy at that white party. But does that necessarily mean that's strong evidence? Anybody could have been at that party, though, right?
Yeah, to the extent of whether or not it is strong evidence, it certainly places him at the location where it happened. And one has to remember that when we're talking about a civil court of law, they don't have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to prove their case by the preponderance of the evidence, which means they have to prove more likely than not that this occurred. So if you can think of a scale that cuts even, right? Just a slight tip in favor of the plaintiff is enough. So even if this is not necessarily the smoking gun, we still have some evidence which may be sufficient in a civil court of law.
All right, we'll see what happens. And we know this is only the tip of the iceberg, because Tony Busby now has, I think, 120 alleged victims, or those who may be suing Diddy, and we're talking about just a handful today. So we'll have to see. Baoji Akingbola, thank you for joining us here on The Factor. We always appreciate your expertise, sir.
This case is getting crazier and crazier. Now, as new developments happen in this case, we're going to tell you about them here on The Factor.